So we begin from the beginning of B'shah Shekdimu Ayin Beis, Terav. This is perhaps the most profound discourse, mystical and Hasidic discourse ever delivered. It's definitely the longest. And it began being delivered Shavuos, the holiday of Shavuos, in the year 1912 by the Rebbe Rashab, known as the Rebbe Rab Shalom Dov Ber, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, and it was delivered in the city of Lubavitch, which is a city in Belarus, White Russia. And the discourse began in 1912 and extends for 144 discourses. It's called a hemshech, a series that extends for 144 individual discourses, one flow. And then there's a extra section called the part that was not said. So actually, the way this was written in one long flow, without any breaks. And then later, as it came each week after week, or each period after period, the Rebbe actually said a discourse where he added a beginning and an end, which connected it to the weekly chapter or the holiday, and then asked some questions on that particular chapter or holiday, and then said, to understand this, let's continue where we left off. So in writing, he was ahead of what he said, and after he spoke it, he would go back and add these beginnings and ends, and also edit the actual text itself. So it's a whole process of how this was developed, which we will we'll post it all on our website in detail. So it began on the Shavuos in 1912, and now we're in 2012. So we're celebrating the centennial. And what better way than studying this discourse from the beginning, which begins, as I said, B'shah Shekdimu. It's a Talmudic, a Medrashic statement that opens up the verse, that opens up the discourse, and with that begins the flow. Now, let me just say one overview of the entire discourse. It's a very profound discourse, very dense and very complicated, but it's always good to sum things up. I would say that the whole discourse of Ayin Beis comes to address one fundamental question: the interface between the divine and the mortal. Can we marry heaven and earth? Can these two entities, can these two realities of the finite and the infinite, of heaven and earth, of the spirit and matter, of the spiritual and the material, can they actually join and fuse as one? And of course the answer is yes. And hemshech Ayin Beis, which we call the hemshech, the series 72, is all about how. A detailed discussion and dissection of existence, and teaching us how we can connect these two seemingly disparate, seemingly dichotomous, seemingly diametrically opposed realities. So, of course, it goes into much detail because it's not just a philosophical academic exercise, it's also going into how to do it in specific detail, how to go away and actually live your life in a more divine way. Now, of course, the challenge is that we begin our lives, or at least in our perception, that we are self-contained, we are self-absorbed, self-interest, narcissistic creatures, interested in our own survival of the fittest, the id, or whatever other name you want to call it. How does you take in a self-absorbed ego, driven by its own interests, and turn it into something that becomes a force that channels the divine, something greater than itself? So obviously, there are many, many elements of this, which include finding within the yesh. Yesh is the Hebrew name for ego, self, sense of self, self-absorption. Finding within it embedded elements that are beyond your own self-interest, divine elements. And of course, finding within divine elements that relate to this yesh, to relate to existence and to our sense of self as we know it. And that's where these two have to meet. So the process, of course, goes in two directions: from the divine to earth, and from earth back to the divine, from heaven to earth, and from earth to heaven. And in the beginning of the discourse, which is going to be the first bunch of chapters is a dissection. You can say a map, a blueprint of what existence looks like. And essentially what he's going to be saying, and what we're going to be learning now as we begin, after he goes through the introductions, is that the first step that connects one entity with another is what we call in Hebrew ratzon, will. So for me to connect with you, for me to connect to anything, to any object, I need to want it. Wanting is already a state that's outside of me, me, my essence self, because if I don't want it, and then I'm just self-contained again, self-absorbed. As soon as I want something, that will, ratzon, creates a channel. The channel is for me now to get it. Doesn't mean I have it yet, but it's the beginning of the first step. If there's no will, if the divine has no will to create existence, there's no connection between the divine and existence. So this will becomes an active force, an active cosmic force in existence that we will be analyzing, will be trying to capture. How do you get to that will? How do you understand that will? So if we want to connect to the divine, if I want to connect with another human being, I need to understand what are they made of? What do they want? What do they want of me? You can say it's understanding the purpose within it all. But purpose lies in a will and a desire. And that is what's going to be called in Kabbalistic terminology Kesser. Kesser, the crown. It is the first or the beginning of or the source of all the sfirot, which is the structure. So before you have a building, before you have an entity, you need to have a will to want that entity. And that will becomes the first bridge. That's the beginning of the beginning of the discourse discusses this will. But then he moves from the will, from this bridge, to the actual dissecting the structure itself. And that's going to be called pnimi, which means the pnimi is how something is, the details, the internalization and the details of a structure. The will, in other words, is what's called makif, is an all-encompassing, hovering, unifying force that just creates the initial connection between the source and what it desires. And then comes the next step, which is the detailed breakdown of what it actually implements and executes that which is desired. What he's going to do is compare it to the human being, which is a consistent way that Chassidus does this. For my flesh I behold God, by looking at the human structure, how we too are made up of two forces. One is the details of our beings, our bodies. We have the faculties that manifest inside of each container within our beings. And then we have the general all-encompassing, the will power, the desire, that is a much more general, a much more hovering force that's closer to the essence of what we want, but it is not yet broken into detail. And on contrasting these two will help us understand how we get from the details, how we get back to the so-called source. So now we'll begin studying it inside. Page 1, chapter 1 of B'shah Shegdimu Terav. The titles of Chag HaShavuos, Tofresh Ayin Beis, which is the Shavuos, the year is 5672. We are now in 5772, or in the Hebrew, or in the English equivalent would be Shavuos 1912, and now we're 2012, 100 years later. So he begins with, as I said, with a chazal. Chazal is a statement from our scholars, from our sages. B'shah she'ekdimu Yisrael naaseh nishma. At the time that Israel, and this is talking about Sinai, the events at Sinai, that's hence connected to Shavuos, the holiday of Shavuos, when the Sinai revelation took place. So it says, at the time, at the hour, when Israel preceded naaseh nishma, that when they were told that God has a mandate that He wants to share with them, so they said, naaseh, we will do, nishma, and we will understand. We will do and we will hear, or we will do and we will understand. So the Chazal is saying, the sages are telling us, the time, the hour that Israel preceded by saying we will do, and then we will hear, we will understand, Yordim Malachi Hasharis, the angels, the presiding angels that serve God, descended, the Kosher hemshech Keserim. They bound for Israel two crowns. Echad keneged naaseh, ve'echad keneged nishma. One corresponding to doing, and one corresponding to listening. So again, when Israel proceeded by saying, we will do, we will understand, the angels, the presiding angels, descended and they bound two crowns. Basically, it means that they created two crowns. They knitted or they weave two crowns. One, the crown of naaseh, that corresponds to doing, and one corresponding to listening. Now the Rebbe Rasha begins. Mashmoisin, what this apparently is saying, who? The mashenitnu lehem haksarim hu mepnei shigdimu naaseh nishma. That apparently what this is saying is that what they gave them, these two crowns, it's because in merit of the fact that they preceded, I will do and then I will hear. I will do and then I will understand. Because that's the statement. It says, B'shosh when they preceded acting to hearing, that's when they gave them these crowns. But now the Rebbe Rashab asks a question. Well, it's not yet a question, I'm sorry. Which means, but if they would have proceeded by saying, we will first hear and then we will do, they then would not have given them the two crowns. They would not have given them the two crowns because then the shmiya, the listening, is in order for them to do. What I think he's saying here is that they deserve two crowns because they preceded the acting before they will hear. But had they not proceeded, if it went the other way around, if they will first hear and then they will do, then it makes sense. We hear, then we will do. So the whole hearing is in order for the asiyah, so there's no point of giving them two crowns. But this seems to be a problem, because but then afterwards when he says one crown corresponding to that we will do, and one crown that corresponds to we will listen. From here it appears, in the second half of the statement, that the two crowns are just simply because they said two things. We will do and we will hear. It has nothing to do with the preceding of one before the other. So the beginning of the statement appears because they preceded doing before hearing. That's why they got two crowns, one for hearing, one for doing, one for hearing. Had they not preceded it, they would have only gotten one crown, because it would have been one flow. We hear and then we do. But then afterwards he says one crown for doing and one crown for hearing. Appears from that they're just because they said these two things. Shahade eina emer echad keneged naaseh v'nishma echad keneged mashik dimu naaseh nishma. Because he doesn't say, the sages don't make a statement that one crown is for doing and for listening, and one is for preceding doing before listening. So what's going on here? Is it because of they preceded it? And if that's the case, that makes sense of two crowns, and then, or is it because they said these two things, to hear and to see, to do and then to understand? By saying that one crown is for hearing and one crown is for doing, one crown is for doing and one crown is for hearing, it seems that has nothing to do with their preceding one before the other. So then, in that context, what is the advantage of them preceding one another? Why is the sages emphasize that? We also have to understand why the giving, the imparting of the crowns came from angels. Don't we find the times in the sages, it brings here Medrash Rabbah Gedoshim, Seif Parsha Chav Daled, in the Medrash Rabbah, in the chapter Gedoshim, at the end of chapter 24. So there we bring Mashal HaMelech, an analogy, an example from a king, Shebnei Medina Otru Loi Gimul Ataris, that the people, his nation, they bound for him 3 crowns. So like in this example, just like the people of a nation, the people of his nation, subjects. Bound for him 3 crowns. The same thing, it says al yonim, which means the supernal creatures, the angels or whoever. Al yonim, machtirim, they crown every day God with 3 crowns. What are they? She'en gimel kedushas. They correspond to the 3 kedushas. We say Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. That you are sacred, sacred, sacred. That God is Kodesh, holy. These 3 levels of holiness correspond to 3 crowns. Notel echad. Then God took one of them. V'nosen bereishe, took one of these crowns and placed it on his own head. V'shnayim nosen bereish banav. And 2 crowns he placed on the heads of his sons. So he's comparing this to this statement that we're reading here. So we see from this that the crowns, the giving of the crowns, the imparting of the crowns is from God himself. And here in our statement that we began with, it says, Here it says that the angels descended and bound for them these crowns. So why angels and not God himself, as in that other statement? But also there, in the statement from the Medrash Rabbi that I just read, it also says the Elyenim Machtirim, that Elyenim, those that are above, crown. So therefore there is also a language that is similar to here, the angels. But there's the distinction there, it says only angels, and here it says that God is the one that places these crowns, one on his head and 2 on this head of his shoulder. Now he continues. You see, he's beginning here, developing. We're getting out of the gate here, okay? Developing the concept of the crown. Which also is another very rich element that's all grounded. When you start reading, you say, like, what's the meaning of the crown? In these statements, you'll see how significant that is in the whole picture. So it's grounded in Talmudic and biblical statements, all these deeper ideas. And here, and now, in the mission of us, the mission in the ethics of our fathers, Yisod says, Gimel Kesarim. There are 3 crowns. Another crown situation. Gimel Kesarim, 3 crowns. Kesser Torah, the crown of Torah. The Kesser Kuhana, the crown of priesthood. Kuhana, Kohan. The Kesser Malchus, the crown of kingship. And then the Kesser Shemtev Oil Al Gabeim. And the crown of the good name rises above them all. So we see here there are 3 crowns. The Kanoimer, and in our statement that we began, that the time when Israel proceeded doing overhearing, it says, it only says that they bound 2 crowns. So he's asking an additional question, 3 crowns, 2 crowns. We also have to understand what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says there are 3 crowns. When he breaks it down, he actually counts 4 crowns. Im Kesser Shemtev. Because he says 3 crowns, Kesser Torah, the crown of priesthood, the crown of kingship. And then he says, the Kesser Shemtev, the crown of the good name, rises above them all. So bottom line is there are 4 crowns. Why does he not count the crown of the good name, in the number of the crowns that he initially begins with? 3. He should have said He should have said there are 4 crowns. And also another question, what is the meaning that it rises above them? That the crown of the good name rises, rises, is above, is superior to, above them all. She'ela rises above them. So we have a series of questions. Good questions always have the answer, as we know. Now, Hakim Uksarim, Kesser Torah, these 3 crowns of the Torah, crown of the Torah, the crown of the priesthood, crown of kingship, but Derech Klal in general, they are in the 3 pillars, the 3 paths. Let me just explain what Gimel Kavim means. Gimel Kavim are 3 paths. They usually refer to the structure of existence is made up of 3. Similar to the human body, which is a microcosm of existence. The right side, the left side, and the center. the spine. What would a person be, God forbid, without a spine? There'd be no centrifugal point that creates balance. You see, a table of 2 legs cannot stand. 3 legs are necessary in any structure. So the structure essentially minimum is 3 kavim, is right, left, and center. So he's saying that these 3, like we find in the Pirkei Avot, it says, are 3 pillars that the world stands: Torah, avoda, service, and gemilas chasadim, good deeds. So you have the 3 pillars. So he's saying now these 3 crowns, generally speaking, correspond to these 3 pillars. The Kesser kuna b'kava yamin, the crown of priesthood is on the right side. Right is usually chesed, not usually, is chesed, the right side, refers to giving. Ki yadua the kohen of b'chinas hachesed, as it's known that a kohen, a priest, is the level of chesed, of kindness. Like it says, you are a priest forever. The kohen al b'chinas hachesed, that refers to, that kohen refers to the level of chesed, of kindness, which is the right side. The atop b'chinas gilui, when you say the atop kohen la'olam, you, whenever you say you is a revealed term. When I say him is a hidden term. So in Torah, when you say atop, whenever you say atop loshen noichach, it means loshen noichach, as he's present, it means the person is there. So if I refer to someone you, it means I'm seeing this person. I'm able to point to him. I'm able to identify him. When I say he said, means he's not here. When you speak to someone, you don't say he, you say you. When you speak about someone that is distant, you say he, him, he, she. The atop b'chinas gilui. So atop means revelation. Shezehu hefesh bein atop lehu. The atop l'neichi. That's the difference between you and who, him or her. Atop means I'm directing my words to someone specifically, it's revealed. And who means someone that's not around, it's concealed or not here. The chesed hu b'chinas gilui. And chesed is also the level of gilui, revelation. When something is, when you're a kind person, kindness, you're giving. So it's a form of revealing. It's a form of revelation. It's not a form of concealment and withholding. Gevura, for example, which is the antithesis to chesed, would be concealing, would be withdrawing, would be in some way limiting the flow. The gas, pressing the gas, would be chesed. The brakes is gevura. So atop refers to chesed, giving, which is the right beginning of gilui. And chesed is actually the beginning, the root of all the human emotions. All begin with love, with the giving of love. Every emotion begins with love. That's how Chassidus sees things. They begin with the concept of giving and love and revelation. That's also called yoim. Shenikra gam ken yoim. That's why it's also called yoim. As it says in the Siddur. The Siddur is the Siddur of the Mittler Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, that essentially based on the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad. But Pirush Baruch Shamar, that's what he explains. The Baruch Shamar, he says Baruch Shamar. So he basically is saying that the level of Yom, which is revelation, that's the level of Chesed, Yom. So therefore, Kohen refers to the right side, which is Chesed. The Kesser Malchus, who bekava Smoel. The crown of kingship is on the left side, which is Gvur. The Hari Malchus, Ikar Binyonu Ma Gvuras, because kingship, authority, leadership, its main structure, its main building, it's mainly built from, it's mainly comprised of Gvuras. Gvura is severity. Liyas de Savas Biyah, he's explaining it now more in the mystical terms, and more in the cosmic terms, because the creation of Biyah, Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah, the 3 worlds of Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah. Remember, there are 4 worlds we will be discussing throughout. To remember, hemshech Ayin Beis doesn't begin with introductions. He goes right into the subject matter. So he says the creation of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah is creation, formation, and action, the 3 lower worlds. Atzilus is the world of unity. All the transmissions and revelations in the world of Biyah, kolhu al yedei Malchus. Everything comes from Malchus. Malchus is considered always the lowest of a world. It's like the king, the authority, and the leader of the world that it stands above. Al kain binyanom hu ma'gvuras. So therefore, that's why its structure, its building comes from Gvura. So Kesser Malchus therefore is on the left side. Kesser Malchus B'Kava smells on the left side. That Malchus, because Malchus comes from Gvura. What he apparently is saying is because in order to create the worlds, you need to have tzimtzum. You need to have concealment. You need to have direction. You need to have transmission. If it was just unbridled love, a flow, you wouldn't be able to create these worlds. So to create the worlds, to be an authority over these worlds, to rule them, you need the rule. You need the order. What's it called? The order of law. You need some order and law, gvura. So Malchus, therefore, the crown of Malchus, as opposed to the crown of priesthood, is the left side, which is gvura. That's how you govern. You govern with gvura. And the third. One second. That's why the crown of Malchus. Also, the crown of Malchus is also on the left side, the left arm. Kav can also be the left line, the left pillar. The Kesser Teru b'Kav Emtzai, and the crown of Torah is the middle spine, the middle path, the middle pillar. U'Kanoida b'Hagimel Dvarim Teira Vedi Gemilas Chasadim. Kanoida. Like it's known in the three things, as I mentioned before, of Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasad. The end of the first chapter in Pirkei Avot says that three pillars, Al Shleisha Dvarim Ha'elam Kayim, Ha'elam Oimid, Al Shleisha Dvarim Ha'elam Ha'elam, are three pillars the world stands, and that's Torah, as we said, Avodah, service, and Gemilas Chasadim, which is Chesed. So it's known about these three things, these three pillars, the Torah b'Kav Emtzai. Torah is the middle path. The right path is Gemilas Chasadim, which is the Kesser of the, as we said, the Kesser of the crown of priesthood. The left side is Avodah, service. In this case, it was referring to the crown of Avodah, the crown of the kingship, which is from Gvur. Okay. So now he's established that the three crowns are the three pillars of the three right, left, and center. And now he's going to go into understanding what Kesser is. In order to understand all of this, to understand all this and answer all these questions, we have to first understand what is this level called Kesser in general. What is it? To talk about crowns, what is a crown? What is meaning? What's its symbolism? What's its significance? And he begins now, he's going to explain, quoting the Pardes. The Pardes is from Ramosha Cordovero, a 16th century Kabbalist, a peer of the Arizal. They both lived in the Tzfat, northern Israel. So Ramosha Cordovero, his classic magnum opus was called the Pardes. So he's going to bring from the Pardes, which is made up of many sections, the Shar HaErchim, or Shar HaKinuyim rather, Shari Kinuyim, which is the gate of, names, or Kinuyim are descriptions. So the Pardes brings, the Hine Isib Pardes Shar HaKinuyim Erech Kesser, that in Pardes and Shari Kinuyim, in the passage on Kesser, V'zel Sheinei, and he's actually quoting him, he's citing him, V'zel Sheinei. This is his language, V'zel Sheinei, this is his words. Quote, Yesh Shepirish Meloshin Hamtana. There are those that interpret Kesser, crown, from the word Hamtana. Hamtana means to pause, to wait. Kumei Kesser li zoyer. Meloshin Hamtana, to wait, pause, the type of Kesser li zoyer. Wait for me a bit. Vakavona, what is the meaning behind that? This is all the Pardes. This is all the language of the Pardes. Vakavona, the meaning of Vakavona, the intention. Al taksha b'mokem hazeh klal. Kesser li zoyer. Don't think Don't begin to process. Don't concentrate and think about the Mokamaz in this place at all. Omram hamtin achi yispashet v'os tuchel ohavin. So Keser Lizoyim is interpreting, meaning, wait for me a bit, meaning don't jump and interpret what you're hearing right now, but wait until it spreads, and then you'll be able to understand. It would be like a teacher is conveying an idea, and the student right away jumps and wants to understand, so he says, no, Keser Lizoyim, wait. Pause. And wait till the idea develops, or wait till something spreads forth, and then you'll be able to understand. So Kesser in this context means a type of waiting and pausing, a type of patience, to be patient. Okay? Kain pirshu haga'enim. Kain pirush haga'enim. This is how the Go'enim interpret this. The Go'enim are the generation that came after. There were the Tanoim and the Amoraim, and came the Rabbonos of Roy. The Go'enim are the ones that come before the Rishonim, basically the 9th, 8th to 10th century. Or the earlier even, 7th to 10th century. So this is the interpretation, the first meaning of Keser in the Pardes, from the Ramak, which means patience, to wait, to pause. He adds in the parentheses here, and this also includes, and this also, the interpretation of Keser from the word shtika, silence. The hainu hamtin losh li v'doim v'lahagi dover, which means hamtinly, wait, v'doim, and be quiet before saying anything. Doim, silent, don't say anything. Shtika the hainu hamtin, wait, patiently, wait for me, v'doim, and be silent from saying anything. So very similar, it's like somewhat of a postulate from the idea of patience. Okay? So, v'in hashtika b'zehu, what does the silent element add to this? The shtika, the silence, is emphasizing because it's beyond understanding and comprehension. So that's why it's telling you, don't yet try to comprehend or understand, because it's beyond comprehension and understanding. Meaning that Kesser, in other words, referring to a level that's higher than understanding and which means referring higher than structure, so to speak. Like it's similar to what it says in the book of formation, Sefer Yetzirah. Some say it was composed by Abraham. It's maybe the earliest, or if not the earliest, Kabbalistic text. Blum picham ledaber. Close your eyes, your mouth from speaking. The lipcha milaharer, and your heart from thinking. Silence your lips from speaking, and your heart from thinking. Omnam, however, from Mashakos of Hamtin Achi Spashet, but this is the Rebbe Rashab analyzing the words of the Pardes. But from what he says, wait till it spreads out. Move in the Makom Mokim Haschol Dover. Shiyim Mezais Pashas Vigili. However, from what the Pardes said, wait, be patient, means that it's not completely beyond your comprehension. It just means right now, don't jump. Wait, be patient until it spreads forward. So Makom Mokim Haschol Dover Shiyim Mezais Pashas Vigili. At the end of the day, it's still the beginning of the transmission, and there will be a hispashus begili. It will spread out and will be revealed. That means that Kesser, that's why Kesser is from the expression hamtana, to wait, to be patient. Silence would imply complete silence, that you cannot comprehend it. It's beyond you. And whereas hamtana, patient waits, is referring more like at this stage you're not yet there, but it's already the beginning of a revelation. Kesser. Okay. Well, b'hamtana yesh beis inyanim, and now the Rebbe Rashab adds that in hamtana, in patience, there are two things. V'hu ha'ikuv mila'ayin v'lachshav bei. Number one is ikuv, is holding back. Let me say holding back. How would you say holding back? Ikuv. Refraining, ikuv. refraining from concentrating and immersing in the idea. So he's like saying, be patient and hold back, ikuv. Hold yourself back from immersing and concentrating on it. But it also has another meaning. Has another inyan, has another thing in it. Another element, another component. V'gam inyan atikva, the component of hope. And he says in Yiddish, as mekenep is der warten davon, that you can anticipate, you can expect something from it. And that's the hope that it'll expand and it will be revealed. And look there in Rashi on the verse, I guess Keser Lizoyer, Keser Lashon Huchal Shu Inyan Hatikva. That Keser is from the meaning Huchal, which is the idea of hope, Huchal, to anticipate, to await. This is the idea of hope. Lashem v'schilelei. Be silent in eyes of Hashem v'schilelei and wait. Stand in silence and awe for God v'schilelei and await His appearance. So he's essentially reconciling and saying that in Pardes, the first interpretation of Keser is patience, waiting. Wait till it spreads out. Wait till you're able to contain it. The Rebbe Rashab adds that in this there's also the idea of silence. But he explains that silence can imply that you'll never get there, that it's beyond your comprehension. Whereas patience means you will get there. So he in a sense reconciles by saying that the patience of Kesser has two elements. One is right now you are resisting, you are withholding, you are refraining from concentrating on it and having patience, but there's also hope. It's not just silence. It's also hope and anticipation, expectation that something will come out of it, which will be the beginning of the revelation. So Kesser has both these elements. It's before revelation, but it's the beginning of revelation and the hope of the revelation. Okay? How's it going there?
Good. Very good.
The Yesha Pirush, now he continues the language of the Pardes. And then there are those that interpret Kesser kemashmoi. There are those that interpret Kesser literally, or kemashmoi, as the word implies. Hainu Kesser v'atorah, which means a crown. The first interpretation is not a crown. The first interpretation is patience, is waiting. Now we're already talking about a crown. Vatam k'moshe Kesser, and so what's the significance? What's the meaning of a crown? So patience, we understood what it means. Is the patience before the revelation, which includes the hope of the revelation. What is the meaning of crown when you say literally, when you say as the word implies? Vatam, the reason is, I'm now page 2. Just like the crown is the head, atop, all the garments of the body, like you see practically. A king puts on a crown. The crown is above all the other garments. He can dress beautiful shirt and pants and robe and all the other garments that a king may don. But the crown is on top of it all. So just like the crown is above all the garments of the body, Kain midazu, so too this faculty, this midah, this faculty, this force, reish l'chol Atzilus, is the head of all of Atzilus. Remember, Atzilus means to impart. So Atzilus is the entire structure, cosmic structure of existence right now is being called Atzilus. Not the whole Seder Shtalshus, the whole cosmic order, but is the main world that reflects the divine image, the divine picture of existence, snapshot. So Kesser, therefore, in a sense, is like a metaphor. Just like the crown is on top of the head and on top of all the garments of the body, so too Kesser refers to the midah, the faculty, the force that is the head of all of Atzilus. And here the Rebbe Rashab adds in a parenthesis explaining v'nira hakavon, and I feel, or v'nira, it appears that this is intention. The intention of the Pardes, That what he really means to say, be more specific, is the head of all the transcendent energies of Atzilus. I'll explain in a moment. Like the garments of the head, namely the crown here, is the head of all the garments of the body. So you can put many garments on your head. You can have a garment, you can have they used to have what was it called, that sits like a smaller crown that went on the forehead. You can have earrings, you can have other garments, but the crown is the garment above all the garments. That it's higher even than the garment on the head. What he's adding is basically his important point, which is going to come about but later, is that there's really two things in Atzilus. One is called Eris Pnimim and one is called Eris Makifim. The difference is, Eris Pnimi in Hebrew, Pnimi means internal, integrated. There's energy that is internalized and integrated in each of our faculties, let's say in the human being. And Atzilus, that refers to the internalized faculties like Chachma, Bina, Keser, Gvura, Tiferes, and so on. And Eris Makifim refer to the things that are not internalized, but they're more outside of you. We'll call them permeating energy is in Eris Pnimim. They enter, they permeate, and transcendent, meaning that they really remain above. So as we said, Kesser, we'll soon learn, is the willpower. It doesn't have a particular place it rests inside the human entity. It's all-encompassing. It's called makif. It surrounds. Surround doesn't mean physically surround. Surrounds means it's above any defined structure, but it's still part of and the beginning of it all. So he's basically saying when the Pardes says that the crown is like the garments on top of all the other ones, that's the head of not just of it's not talking about the lights, the internal energies, but well, it doesn't say not, but saying that is the reish, is the head of all the all-encompassing, the transcendent makifim of Atzilus. Because a garment, when you wear a garment is more of a makif. A garment doesn't enter internalized inside the human being. It's not like food that you eat and digest. It's a garment that's around your body. And the Kesser is the highest of all garments. So it's the makif, is the reish of all the makifim. Then he continues, a third interpretation in Kesser. The Pardes continues now. And a third interpretation, v'yeshe pirush Kesser, meloshe machtir es hatzadik. The pirush Kesser means machtir, surrounding. Like when you say machtir es hatzadik, to surround the tzaddik. V'akavona, and the kavona, and this is loshen sivuv l'chol atzilus b'teiche. Kesser surrounds, loshen sivuv, surrounds all of Atzilus that's within it. It's like a circle that surrounds, an encircling type of experience. V'nikra kain, and it's called this way, lirmoiz al tarach hamude er, and it's called this way because it hints to, it symbolizes the 660 pillars of light, because remember, Kesser in Hebrew is made up of 3 letters. And Hebrew, the letters all have numbers, numerical symbolism, numerical equivalence. So Tarach, Kesser, is Chaf, is 20, Taf is 400, and Reish is 200. So that's 620. Or, if you reverse the order, Kesser is Taf, Reish, Chaf, Taf, Reish, Chaf is Kesser, refers to 620 pillars of light that radiate from it, from Kesser, that is, ubatzmuse, and are within its essence, v'hem keiches nelamim hashefim er hanelam el hanatzolim hatachtenim. And they are the concealed powers that shefim, that transmit the concealed energy into the imparted forces below. So basically, if you think of Atzilus as being made up of the spheres are the Natzolim, Chachma, Bina, so on, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, all the way through Malchus. Kesser is a crown, and this is not crown here, case more like a circle that surrounds them all. because this is referring to 620 pillars of light that are concealed, but from which flow concealed energy into that which is inside the circle. So there we have three interpretations of Kesser.
You had said initially there were 660 pillars of light.
It was a mistake, 620. That was a wrong.
Okay.
That was a slip. So, the three interpretations of Kesser I'm going to sum up now. Three meanings from the Pardes. One from the word hamtana, patience, to wait for the revelation to emerge and appear. And he explained in that there are two elements. There's the silence of it, which is immediate waiting, and there's the hope that the revelation will come. So it's already the beginning of the revelation, the beginning of a process that will spread outward. The second interpretation of Kesser is, as the word implies, crown, and it's above the entire Atzilus, above all the makifim, all the transcendent energies. And the third interpretation is surrounding. From the word surrounding, it surrounds it all. And it refers to the 620 pillars of light that are concealed or unconscious, that radiate in a concealed way into what is inside the circle, which is the Netzalim, the imparted sphirot that are within. Okay, this is the beginning of understanding what Kesser. What is Kesser? What is the crown? Now he's going to explain it in what we call Hasidus Chabad, how we understand it with a little comment, with a little sense. Because these are words. We're beginning to sense there's something here. Kesser is a form of transmission, different types of transmissions, the beginning, the head, the circle, and so on. And he's going to explain now what this is. And the inyan in this is, it's known that the level of Kesser B'chlal in general, Kesser is, what does it mean in so-called, in terms that we can relate to? It's the level of rotzen, of will, desire. Desire, I don't mean here necessarily pleasure, I mean that someone wants something. So it's the first step outside of your essence to want something, as he's going to explain. When you say Kesser d'Atzilus, the crown of Atzilus, in whatever interpretation, it means it means the will of the Creator or of the Source to impart the world of Atzilus. That's what Kesser of Atzilus is. The Chen Kesser de Bria, and the same thing when you say the crown, the Kesser of Bria, the world of Bria, who arotzen livra elam abriya, is the will to create the world of Bria, of creation. The Hein b'chinas aksarim haprotim. These are what we call the individual, the specific crowns for each world. So there's Kesser of Atzilus, Kesser of Bria, Kesser of Yetzirah, Kesser of Asiya. So essentially the code word in Kabbalah for the word will is when you say someone wills something, you're saying is the Kesser of the thing you're willing. That's the individual crowns. B'chinas ak. Now he's going to speak in a broader sense. He's broadening it out. B'chinas ak. The level of ak. So he's introducing a new world now. We spoke about Atzilus, now we're speaking about Adam Kadmon. Ak is an acronym for Adam Kadmon, which means the primordial man, or manifest as it is in the first man, Adam and Eve. So B'chinas Ak refers to that after the Tzimtzum, after the great dark cosmic black hole that concealed the infinite divine light, the Ein Sof, Or Ein Sof, a space allowed for now, we're going to allow for an independent existence to emerge. Ak is the first universe, the first world. When we say world, it means the first entity, which really, even more than Atzilus, is the map. You can say it is the global map, or blueprint even, of everything of the entire cosmic order. That's Ak, which will be discussed at length further on in the Discourse, in the series of Ayin Beis. What he's saying now is that Ak is the universal Keser. The Kesser, detailed Kessers, the detailed crowns, is the will of Atzilus. There's the will for Bria, and so on. But what is the general will for all of existence? That's called Ak. Nikra Kesser Gabe Klose Ishtalshus Shemenu Lamata. That the crown for the general cosmic order of all of existence, from it and below it, from Ak, is the Kesser, the crown, which means the will for all of existence, is the world of Ak. Moshe Kosev HaMishnas Chasodim, like the Mishnas Chasodim, one of the great Kabbalist student of the Arizal, writes the Aku b'chinas Arich the Dald El Mizbiyah. He writes, the Mishnas Chassidim writes that Ak is the level of Arich for the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. Here he's introducing yet another term, which I shall explain. In Kesser, in the crown itself, which we shall learn, there are two parts. There's Atik, which means removed from, and Arich, which means the long face. Basically, it's referring to the lower dimension of Kesser. So this Mishnah Chassidim says that Ak, Adam Kadmon, the primordial man, is the level of Arich, essentially the lower level of Kesser, to all the four worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, which is really the entire cosmic order. And now he's going to explain. And on this level of Ak is what it says in the Zohar. The Zohar is the classic text from Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, classic mystical text of Kabbalah. That when it arose in his will to create the worlds, what is that referring to? That when it arose in his will to create the world, the will, remember, will is to create. This is the will of the general will, the all-encompassing will of all of the entire cosmic order. This is referring to the will and machshava gduma, and the primordial thought of Adam Kadmon. Like it says in Eitz Chaim, which is the classic, one of the classics, the classic magnum opus of the Arizal. So he's citing here all these different sources. We have so far the Pardes, we've brought the Zohar, we brought the Mishnah Chassidim, we brought now the Eitz Chaim. And even more general to this, so he's moving on to a third level of will. So far we defined individual crowns, which is the will that defines and the will to create each particular universe. We've talked about the general will of the cosmic order. Now he's going to talk about the will that is before the tzimtzum even. The will for existence altogether. And in a more general sense, we're talking about the will, the simple, the indivisible will in the infinite divine light, before the tzimtzum, before the concealment. That's the most general will, and he quotes here, like it says in the book Eitz Chaim, the book I just mentioned, when it arose in his indivisible and simple, seamless will to impart and to create, that is this general will that he's talking about. The kolzeo b'chinas Kesser b'chol madrego madrego shekel b'atzmei kol ma she'oleh b'chinas rotzen zeh. All this is the level of Kesser, of the crown, in each level according to its level, that encompasses within it everything that arises in this level of will. So when you say you want something, I want a house. Every detail of that home and that house is included in this Kesser, in this will. I want a particular house. I want to have the world of Atzilut. So that Kesser includes everything in Atzilut. I want the world of Bria. It includes everything in Bria. I want the entire cosmic order. That's Adam Kadmon. I want existence in general. That's the Kesser, the Ratzon, that is there in the infinite divine light before the Tzimtzum. So whenever you say Kesser, you're referring to a will that encompasses everything that's inside, that will be resulting from that will. And then when it emerges and naturally conceives that which is concealed and encompassed and included in that will, and when it comes and it's revealed, this will then remains surrounding and encircling everything that exists. So basically two things that this will has. One, it includes everything that will come from this will, no matter what level it's on. Number two, once it emerges, so let's go back to the example of the house. The will includes the entire house, everything that will be in this detail, in this structure. And then once the structure actually is built, the will still remains there hovering and surrounding the entity that it willed. You see? So it's not just the will something and then goes away once it happens. The will remains a force that always remains hovering over there. The will that you had in this particular entity that you created or you conceived of or imparted. Well, my Keser Atzilus, like the crown of Atzilus, like the Kesser of Atzilus. Kol Esser spheres Atzilus. It encompasses, it includes all the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Ukeshenetzel Atzilus. And once Atzilus is imparted after the will, meaning once it actually comes into reality, so the Kesser continues to surround and encompass all of Atzilus. So it includes that all the 10 spheres, and then after the 10 spheres emerge, it remains a surrounding force around these 10 spheres. As it's known that the circles, the spheres of Arich, which is the lower level of Kesser, as we discussed, surround all of Atzilus, all the way to Malchus of Atzilus. So think of it this way. If Kesser is like a circle, the circle, before there's any details in it, includes the potential of everything that will emerge. And once it emerges, the circle remains there, in a way like a protecting force. Okay? Now he's going back. The same thing with Adam Kadman, which we said is the will for the entire cosmic order. Klali is a general and very all-encompassing energy. Shekel Hakol includes within it everything. Even before it was created. And after the worlds are created, it remains surrounding them. The circles of Ak reach all the way to the bottom of the world of Asiya. So all the worlds, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiya, have this circle around them. And now he's going back to the third level. Remember, he's talked about 3 different types of Kesser. The detailed ones for each world, Atzilus, Bri, and so on. The one Kesser of Ak, the Ak that's Kesser of all of cosmic order, and now the same is with the general will.
Is there a name for that?
No, it's just called Ratzon HaPashut, which is the indivisible HaPashut, the indivisible will. So before the Tzimtzum, before the concealment, because you're talking about a will that's not yet really shaped, so it's like in a very amorphous state. It's like very deep inside the essence. Before this, also includes everything that will come into existence in it. And after it comes into existence, it surrounds it. A new level is emerging, is being defined now, identified. This is called the great circle, the great sphere. Igul Hagadol. This is important, all these words. Shalifne Hakav. This is the big circle. And when you look at those images that we've discussed, where you have, the circle, each world has a circle, Ak has a bigger circle, and this is the circle that is Tzimtzum, when God concealed the light, remains a type of like a hole in the bagel. Is the big circle. This is called the great circle, the great sphere that precedes the Kav. It precedes the ray of light, the thin thread and ray of life. And Shasevu Makiv Kol Ishtalshlus, this surrounds and encircles all of the Ishtalshlus, the entire cosmic order. Shema HaKav, everything that comes from the Kav, from that narrow thread of light. And all the circles, all are rooted in the big circle. So it's like this. There's the big circle. Within it is all of existence. Within it are other smaller circles. Each circle deals with it. The Ak deals with the circle of the cosmic order. Atzilus deals with the circle of Atzilus. Bria. But each one has the two components, he's saying. It includes everything before it emerges within it. It's in the will. And then it remains hovering afterwards. And this is critical because we're talking about retracing the steps, the interface, because you want to go back through that will. So it's important that the will remain there. It didn't disappear. That's why you need to reconnect to it. You can reconnect it. Now comes a very critical point where he starts talking about the interface. And this is what Keser is in every place. Keser is the intermediary. Mamutza. The word mamutza means intermediary or interface. Classic interface example is a translator. It's basically a force, a factor that connects two separate entities. That's what an interface is. So this is what Kesser is in every place is called the interface, mamutza. Remember that word. Mamutza. In Hebrew, in the transliteration would be MEMUTZAH, mamutza. U'kumoy Kesser, that's Atzilus. Remember now again, we're talking about three levels of Kesser: the Kesarim Pratim, the detailed ones for each world, the Kesser Kloli, Ak Adam Kadman for the cosmic order, and the Rotzen HaPoshet, the Eagle Hagadol, which is all of existence. So, for example, now he's saying this Kesser, this crown, that includes everything within it beforehand and surrounds it afterwards, is the intermediate interface. Like the crown of Atzilus, the Kesser of Atzilus is the interface between the Maitzel, the imparter, and what he imparts, the source and the impartees, the spheres of Atzilus. The same with all the levels we discussed earlier. In each world, Ak, Ratzna Pashut, whatever level we're discussing, HaKesser Amamutza. Kesser is the interface. And the same is also in the worlds of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah. The Malchus, Atzilus, Shanasa Kesser Labri. He's introducing another new idea. Remember, we spoke about Malchus is what governs and rules each world. So the Malchus of the higher world becomes the Kesser, the crown for the next world. Shamalchus, the Malchus, Atzilus, Shanasa Kesser Labri. Harizem Mamutza ben Atzilus Labri v'chem Labri leYitzir. So also within each of the worlds, the Malchus of the lower world becomes the crown of the next world. So essentially, Kesser becomes
the higher world.
Right. The Malchus of the higher world becomes the crown of the next, the Kesser. So essentially, Kesser becomes the intermediary, the interface between the worlds. So Malchus, the Ein Sof, which we will learn later about, Malchus, the lowest level of the that's in the Esospheres Agnusis, in the hidden spheres, which are the hidden spheres, the potential state of spheres in the energy before the Tzimtzum, that Malchus will become beginning of the Kav, which becomes the Kesser, like the crown, above Ak. So everything always has that intermediary element. The lowest level of the higher dimension becomes the highest level of the lower dimension. So there's never a disconnect. This establishes that we have stepping stones as we climb this ladder, as we retrace the steps, or both ways, and how creation comes into being, how existence comes into being, and also stepping stones to retrace our steps. So imagine, for example, someone thinking they got lost. We don't get lost in this universe. You have the steps to get back. That's why it's so important, this. Okay? Now he's explaining how Keser, which is now Rotzen, we said Keser is Rotzen will, desire, so he's saying, explaining, how does it create this interface? So we established that it's will and desire. Now he's going into the interface element. How does it create the interface? Because when a will awakens, is aroused inside of a person, kavyochel, well, not person, he was talking about God. When there was an awakening, kavyochel, because, so to speak, because you can't really say an awakening before and after, so it's so to speak, when there's an arousal of will, that creates, that creates a shaykhus, a connection, some commonality with the thing that you were aroused by, or aroused for, to the thing that you are aroused or awakened to. I'm giving an example from a human being below. The kedim sheneseres, before there was an arousal or awakening in the seder.
See there.
Before he awakened, what's the right word? I don't say aroused, not awakened. We say that before the early signs, the Seder means to wake up. Before something began to emerge, before something began to be, before any will began to really emerge from him, awaken from him, to any particular thing, he's completely apart from it. He has no connection to it. So before someone wants something, what connection do you have to something that you have never wanted, never desired? You have no connection to it beforehand. And when a will to it is awakened, something inside of you begins to rumble, begins to, what's the word for it? Begins to desire.
Resonate.
Not resonate. It's like the beginnings of something. It begins to be born. So it begins to stir. Yeah, it begins to stir. The stirrings of something for this, through this becomes a connection. So just imagine, here's a glass of water, here's you. You have no desire, you're not thirsty, nothing. You have no connection to it. It's there and you're here. The first connection happened when you want it. So you may not even have taken it yet. You want it. Now here, of course, we're talking about God creating that doesn't exist yet. But something you want. Or you want a house. You want a home to live in. Or you want to find someone to love and marry, have a healthy relationship with. These things create a connection. If a person doesn't even want it, they're definitely not going to pursue it, and it's not going to happen. So the first step in anything is the first desire. The first is that stirring, right? Now he's explaining, as it's known, the rotzen in Hebrew, the word for will. Interesting. See, we say will, it doesn't contain necessarily this meaning, but rotzen in Hebrew, hu loshen merutza. Merutza means being drawn to something or being happy with something. You say merutza, one's satisfied, but here it means being drawn. He says, it's the leaning and being drawn to something. Ratzon comes from the word merutza. So let's think of it this way. You're here and just self-contained and so on. Will means that something is like beginning to draw you. It's like almost a gravitational pull. It's a pull. Merutza means that you're running toward it. You are drawn, attracted to it. Hatiyah means a leaning, a drawn to it. Hemshech le'ezadover, being drawn to any particular thing. Before there's stirrings, before there's a stirring of any will, it's generally separate from it. Havdalah. He's then elevated and concealed within himself. You're self-contained at that point. You don't want any. You don't want anything. You don't need anything. So it's completely within yourself. It's completely concealed within himself, and because there's no revelation. Will, desire, Ratzon is already the being drawn, the leaning toward it. It means leaving, exiting your own inner sanctum, and becoming in some way revealed, emerging, to something that's outside of you. So if you think about it this way, if a person didn't have will, okay, they would be forever a self-contained castle. I'm not saying we as humans it's possible to be that way, but if you didn't have any willpower, no will to wake up, no will to go out, no will to do anything, you would just be locked inside your own fortress, and that's that, concealed, and none of you would be revealed. But when you're drawn to something, it awakens and stirs something inside of you. So Ratzon begins the first step of going outside of yourself to get something that you desire that's outside of you. This is the example from the human being. Now he's going to apply it to above. And similar to this, you can understand how it's above, kavyachol, so to speak. The kedem is before the awakening, before the stirrings of the awakening of the will, for the universe, for the worlds. The infinite divine life was completely separate from all the worlds. Doesn't have any shaykhus at all, has no connection, has no similarity, no commonality, has no common denominator with the worlds, to the worlds. On the contrary, it's completely concealed within his own essence. And there's no gili at all, there's no revelation at all, it's completely self-contained within his own essence. And then he adds in a a good 10-line, if you more 15-line parentheses. So we're going now into parentheses. It's like a tangent. It's not a tangent, but it's an elaboration within this. So what we made the statement was that before there's an awakening of any will, there's no connection between the essential divine, infinite light and the worlds.
Well, there's no worlds.
Yeah, but there's also not only there no worlds, there's not even interest in worlds. He's not relating to them. As I said, it's like before you even wanted a cup of water. There are no worlds, but it's more than no worlds. The question is their relation. There could be no worlds, but it could be that he envisions them, or they some way have some connection to him. You could, for example, not have a house, but you want a house.
But this quotation, when it arose in his will to create the worlds, you're now talking about something before it even arose in his will. So there's no worlds.
There's not only no worlds. There's no concept of worlds.
Right.
We're talking about no worlds. That's obvious.
Right.
But even we're talking about without a will, there's no connection even to the concept of worlds. So before you can will wanting to have a home, and you just don't have the home actually. Here we're not even talking. There's no connection. There's no interest. And therefore there's no being drawn to building a home. Now he's saying like this. On the contrary, he's all concealed within his own essence. Everything is self-contained there. And that's that. And this is even more so than humans. Humans we need things. The divine doesn't need anything. So it's even more so. So now he's adding in the parentheses, and we say that in his essence, everything is concealed and there's nothing revealed. He says, Gam lo b'chinas gila la'atzmei kavyachol. You can say, you know what, it's not revealed to anyone outside of him, hypothetically. But he himself has already in his mind, in his heart, some desire. So he's saying, no, we're at a point where even within himself, even to his own thoughts, because, in other words, let me put it this way. In a human being, let's just say, there's a state where you don't even have a desire for a home. But then there's a state you start thinking, I want to build a home. But only you know. You don't tell anyone. Then you tell someone. So that makes it even more connected. And then you actually go build it. He's saying here is that in the divine essence, the divine light before the tzimtzum, before it arose in his will, not only is it not revealed outside of him, but even in his own mind, he also doesn't have any connection to it. Because if he did, that's already a connection. Because even when you're thinking, when something starts the stirrings of an awakening within yourself, it also has some, it has some object of the desire. That means there's some connection to that thing. The only thing is, it's still within yourself. He's just breaking it into levels, because these levels are very important. But before any type of stirring, any awakening, there was no revelation at all. On the contrary, it was completely concealed, no revelation at all. What he just added was no revelation, not just no revelation, period, also no revelation even to himself. It's not like you know about it, but you haven't yet told anyone. Now he's going to say something. This is very thorough. He's going to qualify. It's possible now. It's possible for giluyim la'atzmi shem b'chin shaychus l'davar Atzilus. You could, for example, have things that are revealed to you that doesn't mean that has no connection to something outside of you. And he's giving you an example. He's want to qualify because he said here that if it's revealed to you, it means you already have a connection to it. So he's saying, no, there are things that you could be revealed to yourself that have no connection to something outside of you. And he's giving an example, kamei b'tainug, like pleasure. Shemisanik be'etzem shaloi. When a person just has pleasure from being, pleasure from his own essence. So that type of pleasure is not dependent on something outside of you. It's like basically the pleasure of existing. It's hard to maybe give an example with humans, but God. Just pleasure of being. Okay? So not that you need a cup of water, not that you need a house, not that you need Atzilus, Bria, Tzir, But he's qualifying, he says, that's true, there is such a thing. But you really can't call that revelation. On the contrary, that's more of a person going inward. It's elevating and going to the exalted nature of his own essence. That's why such pleasure is only somebody who is fundamentally, who is essentially an exalted or elevated soul. And in a time when he's in an exalted state. Let me just say, like a king, when he's in his ultimate exalted state, when he has pleasure from just a fundamental, essential pleasure that is not connected to any particular object. It's a pleasure just from the exalted thing itself. When he has such pleasure, the truth is, from this exalted state, he elevates to a place that's even more separate from everyone else. So not only does it not connect him to anything, it actually brings him the other direction, where he's going even more inward. An example for this is also in will, where merutza, where he is satisfied with something. Not that he wants something, but he's kimashu merutza, that he's satisfied, he's content. He's explaining now, not just in pleasure, but also in rotzen and Kesser. There's also the dimension where you just are content. You're content without having actually an object that's outside of you that's bringing you that contentment. So that's a gila. Ach ein bezeh hisedus adayin. But this is not in the category of anything that's really what you would call stirrings, awakings. Only thing is, it could be a cause that will bring to some awakening. But on its own, it's not. You can't call this an awakening state. It's just a state of contentment. Now he's going back to before the parentheses. We're finishing the parentheses. But when you do awaken with any particular desire or will, I feel it even to himself. Once you call it an awakening to something, that's already creating a connection to the object. And before it was awakened, before it was stirred, there was no revelation at all, even not to yourself. So he just qualified, he wanted to bring out that there's a level of experience that you experience within yourself that has nothing to do with anyone else, but that's not what he's discussing here. That's not, there's no before and after there. There's no state of awakening or not awakening. That's just an internalized state where you actually go deeper inside yourself.
Again.
So now we're getting back to willing something. So the willing, the first stirrings, before the stirrings, there's no connection at all. So therefore there's no interface. That's why Rotzen and Kesser are so vital, because that's going to be that's going to be the connection to what you want. We're almost done in the first chapter. And when it arose in his will, we're after the parentheses. Now, when he arose in his will to put existence into place, that was a being drawn and a revelation outside of himself to the general cosmic order in general, or to whatever particular world in detail that we talked about. So that's what the will does. And though this will is still before its actual creation, it's just willing it, like I mentioned, you don't have it yet.
Yeah.
Like when it arose in his will in the infinite divine light before the tzimtzum. In order for there to be the actual creation of the world, you need to have the concealment of the tzimtzum, which will conceal the energy, the light. And also the levels after the tzimtzum. There are many concealments. Each world, each level, each gradation has another concealment. To come at tzimtzum ak, like the tzimtzum of Adam Kadmon, there's the tzimtzum that causes ak to come into place. The tzimtzum hadikna, the tzimtzum of the beard, means the tzimtzum of how it comes through the strands of hair. Nevertheless, what he's saying is, so even though the will creates the connection, but it's not yet created, nevertheless, it is the level of the interface. Because the energy has now at least reached the categorization. You can say it's now at least, proportionate to, relative to, it has now a relative connection. Before, there was no connection at all, before it arose in his will. Once it arose in his will, even though you don't have the entity yet, but you've created the bridge. We haven't climbed the bridge yet. We haven't crossed the bridge, but you've created the bridge that in the air, in this energy, you have something that's already now relative and connected with, some way, with the worlds that will be created. And they will be created from this will. This will give creation to them. It will bring them into being. That's the end of chapter 1. So let me just read the summary of chapter 1 and we'll conclude here. Keser, I'm on page 3. Begins Yiksha, he asks, the mashma shashnek sarmem pnei. It appears from the opening, he's making a summary of this chapter, from the opening statement that the angels bound 2 crowns. So it appears from that was because they preceded naaseh nishma, that first we will do and then we will understand. But then afterwards, afterwards he says one is corresponds to the doing and one to the listening, which seems to be the end and the beginning and end seem to focus on 2 different reasons that they got the crowns. Is it the preceding, or is it because they said 2 different things? To do and to hear. Medrash says, Medrash Rabbi, Kedoshim, as he said, that God places 2 crowns and the head of his sons. And here it says that the angels descended and they bound the crowns. God versus the angels. Over Mishnah the Ovis and Ovis Isha Shleshik Saramet says there are 3 crowns. Over Protius Cheshev Dalek Saram, and then he breaks down 4 crowns.
Where does that 3 and 4 crowns come from? The Medrash also?
No, ethics of the fathers. 3 crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, the crown of kingship. These 3 crowns compared are the 3 paths, are the 3 lines, the 3 pillars. And then Yagdim Inna Kesser B'chlal. He begins by introducing what is Kesser in general. Gimel Perushim B'Kesser. Kesser has 3 meanings from the Pardes. Echad Loshen Hamtana. One is patience, to wait, and he says this is Hakova V'Atikva. This is the Hakova, Hakova, holding back, refraining, V'Atikva, and the hope. Those 2 elements in patience and waiting. Beis Loshen Atara, second from the word crown. Gimel Loshen Sivuv, and third from the word encircling. V'Yavayir, and he explains Kesser ad Reim HaMailis. Kesser, to the highest levels, is the level of will that encompasses everything and then surrounds and encircles everything. And that's why Kesser, wherever in every place, is a mamutz, is an interface. Because before the awakening of the will, even to himself, has a b'chinas helam b'avdal legamri. He's completely concealed and separate entirely from the thing that he wants, thing outside of him. And the awakening, the stirrings of the will, that is the drawing, the leaning toward his galus, his revelation leads to shaykhis, that he should begin to have a shaykhis, to begin to have some relationship, some connection. So the beginning of a relationship is Kesser. Therefore, it is the mamutza, because it creates the beginning of a relationship between 2 entities. Without which, take away Rotzen, you don't have that interface. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2, he's going to start explaining, to understand this level of Rotzen, this level of the interface, we have to start understanding the structure itself, what it's interfacing with. And he's going to dissect the structure and then travel back to the will, back to the essence. Okay. So this is chapter 1, page 1 till 3 in hemshech Ayin Beis.